Have you ever felt trapped in your own life? Like a tiger that was born to roam the jungle freely, but lives locked up behind bars? I'll be blunt. It's not normal to live with that pain in your chest, the one that tells you you're not free. You don't have to feel like the world keeps spinning while you're stuck in place. And yet, you keep smiling, saying, "I'm fine," as if nothing's happening. But something is happening. You're wasting your time, your energy, your life. And the saddest part is, you're accepting it. Enough. Today is the day you decide to break out of the prison you built for yourself. You don't need a guru or a retreat in the mountains. What you need is to break through that mental block. And that's what we're here for. In this video, you're going to discover how to apply 12 powerful Stoic principles. Wise, yes, but also practical, to break free from the painful cycle that's keeping you stuck. Let me be clear. If you feel like a prisoner of your own habits, your fears, your routine, you're not alone, and you're not doomed. Today, you'll learn how to take your power back, step by step, by facing what's been dragging you down so you can finally breathe. Ah, yes, breathe like someone being born again. Are you ready? But before we dive in, let me tell you the story of someone who managed to break the bars of his own prison. Matteo lived in the countryside, surrounded by rusty tools and early sunrises. He was a blacksmith, like his father and grandfather before him. His days followed the same choreography: fire, metal, hammering, sweat, then silence. And while his hands never stopped moving, his soul had been stuck for years. Matteo never complained. For him, everything was always fine. Every night, he ate dinner alone in front of a cold plate, watching the same old clock strike the same old hours. No conversation, no noise, just a silent question screaming inside him. When was the last time I chose to do something for myself? When did I give up on my life and on myself? But once again, that silent cry went unanswered. Matteo went to bed, expecting tomorrow to be just like today, and the next day, and the one after that. Until one day came along, just like any other. But somehow, for him, it was different. It was an ordinary afternoon. A young man from the village brought in a broken hinge, and while Matteo worked on it, the boy said casually, "My grandfather used to say you were the freest man he ever knew." Matteo froze. He swallowed hard. Free? Me? That word landed on him like an anvil, because in that moment, he realized something cruel. It had been years since he felt free, or even alive. "Free, you say?" he murmured without looking at the boy, pretending to keep working on the hinge. "And why did your grandfather say that?" The boy shrugged, with that kind of innocent honesty that stings. "I don't know. He said you did what you loved, that you didn't owe anything to anyone, that you listened more to the wind than to orders." Matteo forced a smile. Yeah, that's what he thought. But sometimes, son, we keep doing something not because we love it, but because we've forgotten how to do anything else. An awkward silence followed. The only sound was the metal cooling with a soft crackle. The boy said goodbye and left, not fully understanding what had just happened. But Matteo stayed still, eyes fixed on the mirror in front of him, as if he had just seen his reflection for the first time in years. That same afternoon, he wandered through the fields, trying to remember where he'd heard something like what the boy had said. "Free," he kept repeating to himself, as if that word had been buried inside him for years. The sky was overcast, the air smelled of damp earth, and the branches cracked under his boots as if pushing him forward, even though he had no idea where he was going. He crossed the hill without thinking much, and as if guided by an invisible compass, he ended up by the old oak tree where Elias, the valley's shepherd, used to graze his flock. The man was sitting there, as always, with the calm of someone who no longer chases time. He held his staff between his knees, eyes fixed on nothing. Matteo sat beside him. Neither spoke for a long while. Then a sparrow, resting on one of the branches, took flight with a sharp flutter and disappeared into the gray sky. "Look at that," Elias murmured, still watching the bird vanish into the clouds. "Free, that's what they are." No one tells them when to leave or which path to follow. Matteo nodded, not quite sure why. Elias continued, "You know what Epictetus used to say? That no one is free unless they own themselves." Matteo turned his head, surprised. "Why are you saying that?" Elias smiled with that kind of wisdom that doesn't need explaining. Because sometimes when someone starts to realize something, they just need to hear it out loud. And in that moment, everything Matteo had been feeling that morning, everything the boy's comment had stirred in him, suddenly made sense. Like all the pieces were finally falling into place. No one is free unless they own themselves. He had felt it in his chest, but now he understood it with his soul. The next day, Matteo didn't light the forge. Instead, he walked barefoot through the damp morning earth. He wrote down everything he no longer wanted to carry. His fear of change, his blind obedience to a meaningless life. Instead of lighting the fire in his workshop, he lit the inner fire that had been out for years. He stopped spending his afternoons fixing orders he hated and began teaching the village children the art of working metal as a form of meditation. He traded nights of drinking for nights of reading under oil lamps, where Seneca replaced his complaints and curses. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy. But one thing was clear: every small act of awareness was a step out of the prison he had built for himself. Every different choice, one less link in his chain. Matteo didn't run away from his life. He finally started living it. My friend, the moral of this story is that the worst kind of prison has no bars. It has excuses, fears, and empty routines. And the jailer? It's you. How long have you been living locked inside a life that no longer feels like yours? Are you going to keep accepting your chains? Or are you finally going to start forging your freedom? You already have the key. Now all that's left is to use it. So my friend, if this message is helping you open your eyes and break free from what's been holding you back, consider subscribing and becoming an exclusive member to access more content that will empower you on this path. And tell us in the comments, what's the first chain you're going to break today? Or just write, "I am Stoic. Today I break the chains that bind me." Let's begin. 1. Accept that you're trapped. I challenge you to ask yourself one direct question. Am I really living? Don't overthink it. Don't try to dress it up. Just answer with the raw honesty you deserve. Are you? Or are you just existing on autopilot? Sit in silence for a moment. If asking yourself that stirs an emptiness, a tightness in your chest, an uncomfortable pause, you already have your answer. And it's not a good one. It's that brief, almost invisible moment when something inside you shrinks. Because the soul doesn't speak, but it makes itself felt. A pressure in your chest, a deep sigh you didn't know you were holding, a silent phrase you don't dare to say, but that keeps echoing inside. I'm trapped. And no, I'm not talking about a physical prison. The most dangerous kind has no bars. It has schedules, habits, excuses, and fear. And you've decorated it so well. You've almost convinced yourself it's home. The cruelest part? You normalize it. You tell yourself, everyone lives like this, or it's just how life is, or I'm too old to start over. And without realizing, you accept that life is just that, a sequence of gray days wrapped in the routine of survival. But if you're watching this, it's because something inside you is no longer willing to accept that silent sentence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "We often act like we're immortal, postponing life as if there will always be time." And that is the trap, thinking you'll get around to it, that you'll break free, that you'll change. But the truth is, there's no later, there's only now. And if your now is being lived in a prison you're holding up yourself, then you need to face it. Not to beat yourself up, but to start moving. You can't break out of a cage you won't even admit exists. The Stoics never ran from this truth. If the life you're living isn't the one you want, then you owe it to yourself, not to others, to yourself, to do something about it. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." It doesn't matter how many years you've been stuck in this cycle, or how many wrong choices you've made. For the Stoics, the real failure wasn't choosing poorly. It was choosing to stay there and do nothing. What matters is not perfection, but conscious action. They believed that persisting in a life that destroys you is worse than having chosen it by mistake. You're not here to resign yourself. You're here to change course. Epictetus didn't speak of freedom as something external. For him, being free meant having control over yourself, over your thoughts, your actions, and what you choose to tolerate. And you've tolerated far too much. You've carried so much for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to walk without chains. That's why today I'm not asking you to run away or give everything up. I'm asking for one thing only. Be brave enough to say it out loud. I'm trapped. Because only the person who admits they're in a prison can begin to break free. So start here. Write down what you can't stand anymore, what you've been calling normal for years. Do something different today, even if it's small. Take a new path, break an automatic response, lean into discomfort, and stop lying to yourself. Be brutally honest. Self-deception is the first lock you need to break. Freedom doesn't come all at once. It comes through small, consistent acts of courage. And the first is to stop pretending you're okay when deep down you know you're not. Do you feel it? That burning in your chest right now? That's your truth trying to come out. Don't shut it down. Don't lock it away again. Open the door, even if it scares you, even if it hurts, because that cage is not your home. It never was. 2. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts. Most of them show up uninvited, settle in without asking, and drag us along before we even notice. But the time has come to stop living on autopilot and start taking back control of what goes on in your mind. Think about it. Sometimes you think something, you feel something, and you have no idea where it came from. That sudden phrase that hits you out of nowhere. I'm not good enough for this. Or that vivid mental image where everything goes wrong. Or that imagined scenario where you fail before you've even tried. And the worst part isn't that it appears. The worst part is that you believe it. And of course, once you believe it, you make it real. The thought comes, and you surrender to it, as if it were an order, as if thinking it made it true. But listen closely. You are not your thoughts. Of course not. You are the one who observes them, the one who decides what to do with them. Epictetus said, "We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens to us." And that, written over 2,000 years ago, is now backed by science. A study from Harvard University found that 47% of the time, we're thinking about something other than what we're doing. And here's the worrying part. Those thoughts are usually negative, imagining mistakes, shame, or loss. This confirms what ancient philosophers and modern thinkers already suspected. As the writer David Foster Wallace said, that voice in your head isn't your voice. It's just the sound of automatic thinking. And if you don't notice it, it'll end up controlling you. That's where modern psychology aligns with what the Stoics taught us. You can't control what you think, but you can control what you do with what you think. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But he didn't just say it. He showed us that we can change that color. We can gradually tame this mind that so often feels more like a wild cage than a useful tool. The Stoics knew the human mind was unpredictable, but they also knew there was no greater freedom than refusing to obey it blindly. They practiced a daily exercise, observe without reacting. When a negative thought came up, they didn't deny it, but they didn't believe it either. They examined it like a stranger's comment on the street. Does this make sense? Is it worth my energy? Will it help me live better? And if the answer was no, they let it pass. That's how they faced anxiety, fear, and anger. Can you see how powerful that is today? How many times a day do you let an unchecked thought ruin your mood, your focus, or your connection with someone? How often does one single phrase in your head shape your whole day? The Stoics understood. You're not free if you believe everything you think. The problem is, no one taught us to observe without reacting. To say, I'm thinking this. But that doesn't make it true. And that's where real Stoic practice begins. Not in getting rid of negative thoughts, that's impossible, but in refusing to identify with them. You are not the fear that pops up before you speak. You are not the memory that brings up guilt. You are not the toxic phrase you repeat to yourself when you're exhausted. You are the one who can see all of that and choose not to get dragged along. Maybe today, for the first time, you can do something different. Maybe instead of telling yourself, "I'm going to fail," you can respond, "Thanks, mind, but I don't need to believe this right now." Maybe next time that self-sabotaging thought shows up, you won't feed it, you won't fight it, you'll just watch it and keep walking. That, for a Stoic, is real freedom. Not having a blank mind, not thinking positively all day, but remembering that you have the final say. And yes, it's hard at first, like a wild horse that refuses to follow the reins. But with practice, patience, and presence, your mind stops being your prison and starts becoming your ally. Because you are not what you think. You are what you choose to do with what you think. And right there, that's where your power begins. 3. Your routine is your worst jailer. The danger isn't having a routine. Of course not. A well-built one can lead you to success. The danger is not realizing that you're becoming your routine. Because at first, you created it. But over time, it began to recreate you, to lock you in, to keep you stuck. That chain of automatic gestures, the same breakfast, the same phrases, the same complaint every morning, becomes so comfortable that you don't even notice how it's draining you from the inside. Habit is the most dangerous narcotic, said Friedrich Nietzsche. And if you're not fully awake, you could spend half your life like that, following a script you didn't write, but repeat every day with machine-like precision. Don't you feel it? That sense that all your days are starting to look the same? That you could swap Monday for Thursday and no one, not even you, would notice? That's the cage. And your routine is the jailer, smiling while it locks you in. Picture this scene, because maybe it sounds familiar. The alarm goes off. You reach out without opening your eyes and turn it off. You grab your phone. Social media, news, exhaustion. You get up, but you're not really awake. Same breakfast, same clothes, same route. You walk into work or class like stepping onto a conveyor belt. Hours pass. You come home and can't even remember what you did today. And finally you collapse in front of a screen and tell yourself, "Tomorrow, for real." But you know tomorrow will be the same. The Stoics knew this well. Seneca wrote, "Life is wasted when it isn't examined with attention." And that's exactly what happens when you let autopilot take over. You stop seeing, stop choosing, stop living. Habit isn't your enemy until it starts stealing your presence, until every repeated action, out of inertia, pulls you further from who you wanted to be, until you realize you're not tired from effort. You're tired from the lack of meaning. Of course, you tell yourself there's no time to change, that it's too late, that you've got too much on your plate. But let me ask you something, directly, no filters. What's the point of keeping everything in perfect order if you're not even in it? Maybe your problem isn't a lack of discipline. Maybe it's that you've disciplined yourself into a life that no longer represents you. And that wears you down. That frustrates you, that hurts. It's not about breaking away from everything. The Stoics didn't promote chaos or empty rebellion. They promoted awareness, presence, choice. The Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment you ask yourself, "Am I doing this because I choose to, or just because I'm repeating it?" When you start living from that question, something shifts. The routine doesn't disappear, but it begins to transform. It's no longer a cage, it becomes a path that you carve out for yourself, step by step. And that begins with a single small gesture. Wake up 5 minutes earlier, not to do more, but to do something different. Read something new, write down a thought, take a walk without your phone. Do something that doesn't produce, but that awakens you. Pause halfway through your day and ask yourself honestly, am I present, or am I just going through the motions? That's where you begin to take back control. That's when your routine stops being your jailer and starts becoming your tool. Because if you change nothing, nothing changes. And you weren't put on this earth to repeat the same days until you burn out. You're here to live with intention. And maybe today, yes, today is the first day you finally do. 4. Let go of total control. There are people who hold their life together like it's an artificial plant. Every leaf in place, spotless, flawless, no surprises. Perfect, right? Just one problem. It's dead. And there you are, checking everything for the fourth time, planning every move, rehearsing every conversation, convincing yourself that if you control it all, nothing will hurt. As if uncertainty wasn't part of the deal. Spoiler, it is. It always has been. Want a Stoic quote? Fine. I won't serve it to you like it's on a calendar. I'll give it to you the way Epictetus would, sitting right in front of you, looking you in the eye. Do you want peace? Then stop demanding that things go your way. Start accepting that they'll go the way they need to. That's not resignation, that's freedom. Because the alternative is the most exhausting mental prison there is. I say this from experience. For years I thought that being in control made me strong. I planned everything down to my breaks. Everything had to go exactly as I'd imagined. The result? Anxiety, constant frustration, and emotional fatigue no weekend could fix. Until one day, it hit me. Control isn't order, it's fear in disguise. Psychology confirms it too. Carl Jung, one of the fathers of modern psychology, put it with brutal clarity. What you resist persists. And you're resisting change, resisting the unpredictable, resisting life just as it is. And here comes the truth the Stoics made clear. Though few are ready to hear it, serenity doesn't come from controlling everything. It comes from no longer needing to. Marcus Aurelius didn't become wise because he ruled an empire. He became wise because he understood that the soul at peace is the one that demands the least from the world. And that doesn't mean giving up. It means living with your feet on the ground and your heart unchained. The Stoics knew freedom isn't about forcing your will on the universe. It's about choosing how you stand in front of what you can't change. That's a kind of courage, one you can train, one that cleans you out from the inside. Here's the paradox. The more you try to control, the less control you actually have. Because in your obsession to anticipate everything, you disconnect from the present. And without presence, there is no power. So, what can you do? First, accept that chaos is not your enemy. It's the teacher that shows up to teach you flexibility, adaptability, and humility. The Stoics knew this. They practiced it every day. They prepared themselves for loss, for mistakes, for change. Not because they were pessimists, but because they understood that life isn't meant to be obeyed. It's meant to be danced with. Second, surrender to the moment. Not like someone giving up, but like someone showing up fully. You're not here to control everything. You're here to respond wisely to whatever comes your way. And that doesn't come from control. It comes from connection. Third, and this one's urgent, make peace with the fact that you won't know what tomorrow brings. And even so, you can still live with intention today. Want 3 practical tools to let go of control and reclaim daily freedom? First, stop over-planning. Have a direction, yes, but let go of the perfect map. Second Stoic commandment, don't react immediately. When something goes wrong, breathe before you act. That pause is your power. And third, talk to yourself every morning. Remind yourself, today I don't control everything, but I do control how I show up. That is true Stoic mastery. Not control over the world, but over yourself. And if you can do that, then you'll finally be free, even if the world crumbles around you. 5. Pain is not your enemy. Pain isn't the enemy, but of course no one ever taught us to treat it like an ally. From a young age we were taught to cover it up, to avoid it, to look the other way. When it hurts, instead of facing it, you distract yourself. You work more. You stay silent when you really want to speak. And I get it. Pain is scary. It drains you. It burns. But if you dare to sit with it for a moment, it can also illuminate. Imagine an untreated wound. You cover it, ignore it, pretend it's not there. But it keeps festering under the bandage. Do you think that will heal it? By ignoring it? Of course not. It ends up infected. The same thing happens with the soul. I'm sure you know someone who always seems to have it all together, but falls apart at the smallest setback, exploding, shutting down, or isolating. We all know someone like that. Or worse, maybe that someone is you. And do you know why that happens? Because most likely it's been years since we truly listened to our pain. We've just buried it under routines, obligations, and smiles that never reach the eyes. Modern psychology knows this well. Psychologist Tara Brach puts it clearly. Unhealed pain becomes a filter through which we see the world. And if we don't face it, it takes control. And you who feel trapped in your own life, have you ever considered that the pain you're carrying isn't there to destroy you, but to wake you up? Think of the Stoics. For them, pain was part of the soul's training. They didn't romanticize it, they faced it. Seneca said it plainly. No tree becomes strong without withstanding strong winds. And you, my friend, you're standing right in the middle of that wind. The key is to stop seeing pain as something you must eliminate immediately. Sometimes it's something you need to sit with, to listen to translate. For example, when something deeply bothers you, instead of pushing it down or lashing out, you can ask yourself, what part of me is being ignored here? What wound is this touching? That simple question is already a form of freedom. Another powerful step is to stop seeking instant refuge in noise. Don't drown out silence with music every time. Don't reach for your phone the moment you feel discomfort. Sometimes, what you need most is just to stay with yourself for a few minutes, without fixing anything, without demanding anything, just being. Because feeling is also healing. Stoicism isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming strong from the inside out. And the first step is to stop running from the pain that's trying to speak to you. You know what Epictetus said? What disturbs the soul is not the suffering itself, but our opinion of it. If even Epictetus, who lived as a slave, was able to think that way, then maybe the goal isn't to silence your pain, but to finally let it say what you've been avoiding. Because sometimes, the real enemy isn't the pain. It's the distance you've placed between it and your truth. Before we continue, I'd like us to do something together. Think about that pain you've been holding in, that discomfort you keep trying to hide. What do you think it wants to tell you? What is it pointing at? Share it in the comments. You can write it in your own words or simply write, I'm listening to my pain, because naming it is already part of healing. And because you are not alone. We're all here learning how to truly listen to ourselves. As the Stoics taught us, pain doesn't come to break us. It comes to show us where we were already broken, so we can rebuild. 6. Only you can give yourself permission to be free. Do you know the story of the chained elephant? They say that long ago, in a cruel circus, there was a massive, strong, majestic elephant who never tried to escape. He had a chain around his leg, yes, but it wasn't thick or unbreakable, just a thin, weak rope, easy to snap. So why didn't he run away even though he was clearly miserable? Because when he was small, the chain was strong enough to hold him back. He tried again and again to break free and he couldn't. And over time, do you know what happened? He stopped trying. Now even though he's strong, he still believes he can't escape. He still thinks he's weak, still believes he needs permission to leave his own prison. Sad, isn't it? And you? How many times have you lived like that elephant? Waiting for someone to tell you the time has come. That yes, you can. That enough is enough. Waiting for someone else's approval. For that green light. For that everything's okay that never shows up. And in the meantime, your freedom, creative, emotional, internal, stays paused, waiting for permission that only you can give yourself. Like I told you before, Epictetus was a slave. His body was literally owned by someone else. But believe me, Epictetus knew that no one could ever own his mind. That was his, always. He said, no one can enslave you without your consent. Because what really holds you back isn't external conditions. It's the belief that you're not ready, not worthy, or not allowed to be fully yourself. And here's the irony. Many of the bars that keep you stuck are already open. They're not locked. They're not sealed shut. You're just still acting like they are. Why? Because your mind hasn't signed your freedom yet. Let me tell you something few will. There's no exact moment when you earn the right to be yourself. No final test. No divine stamp of approval. There's only a decision. The Stoics didn't wait for the world to give them space. They claimed it for themselves through discipline, focus, and internal clarity. Do you know what Marcus Aurelius did each morning before starting his day as emperor? He sat down to write, not decrees, not strategies, reflections, quiet reminders not to be enslaved by other people's opinions or by his own emotions. Perfect tranquility consists in the order of the soul, and that depends on no one but yourself. That's it. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want without consequences. It's living in peace with what you choose, and that only happens when you're the one choosing. You don't need your boss to understand. You don't need your family's approval. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to do what very few people dare to do. Declare yourself free. And I'm not talking about empty rebellion or pretty words. I'm talking about a real, intimate, silent decision. To live from your center. To think with clarity. To speak with truth. To act even if no one claps. Because if every step you take depends on someone else's permission, you'll never walk far. And definitely not toward yourself. Want something that works? Try this today as a Stoic ritual. When you wake up, look in the mirror and say, even if you don't believe it yet, today I won't ask anyone for permission to be who I am. That's not arrogance, that's responsibility. Then, observe your day. How many decisions are you making because you want to, and how many because you're waiting for approval? Just noticing the difference is already breaking invisible chains, and when that moment comes, when you'd usually stay quiet, not out of habit, or hide your truth, pause, breathe, and remember the words of Epictetus. Don't ask for events to happen as you wish for them to happen as they do, and life will flow with peace. Yes, the world may have its opinions about you, but only you get to write your manifesto, and if you don't know how to start, I'll give you one. Say it to yourself, or better yet, write it in the comments. Today, I stop waiting for the perfect moment. Today, I stop seeking permission to be free. Today, I give it to myself. That will be your commitment to yourself, your own contract of freedom. 7. Noise keeps you from truly hearing yourself. How many moments of real silence do you have in a day? And I'm not just talking about traffic or your neighbor's blaring TV. I'm talking about that constant noise you've come to accept as normal. The videos you play without watching, the podcasts you listen to while you eat, the music that plays just so you don't feel alone. That noise surrounds you, but more than anything, it numbs you. And without realizing it, you stop listening to the most important voice of all, your own. A long time ago, I attended a talk on Stoicism and technology. The theme was simple. How do we stay aware in a world that's always shouting? But the real lesson came afterward, in a casual conversation with attendees. That's when I met Tomas, 37 years old, a creative director with a full calendar and an impressive resume, but with the eyes of someone who moves fast and feels little. He came up to me, smiled awkwardly, and said, "I liked the part about silence, but I don't know how to stop. When I sit still, I panic." I asked him, "When was the last time you were with yourself, doing nothing?" He thought for a moment, then said, "I don't know. Maybe never." He told me he started the day listening to voice notes, ate with videos playing in the background, and fell asleep to white noise. He was never in silence, never with himself. I suggested a Stoic practice. Just 10 minutes a day. No screens, no music, no talking, just him and a blank page, like Marcus Aurelius. The next day he messaged me, "I realized I don't know what I need. I'm constantly avoiding being with myself." And you? When was the last time you truly listened to yourself? Do you think Marcus Aurelius wrote meditations surrounded by soldiers clashing swords? With merchants shouting in the streets or senators arguing in Rome? Do you think he found inner order among the steps of the imperial guard or the tension of a crumbling empire? Of course not. Marcus Aurelius wrote at dawn, before the world began demanding things from him, because he knew that without that inner space, nothing else would make sense. Withdraw into yourself. True peace is within, the wise emperor wrote. He didn't write to be read. He wrote to hear himself, to understand, to improve. And that's the irony. We feel trapped in lives we didn't choose, but we don't give ourselves even a minute to ask what we actually want. Why? Because we fall, over and over, into the noise of the world. And believe me, that noise becomes a prison. One you feed every time you fill every silence with something external. So what if today you break that pattern? Not with some dramatic vow, but with something simple. Let silence come back. Turn off your phone 10 minutes before bed. Wake up without checking your screen. Walk without headphones, look around, but also look within. And yes, it may feel uncomfortable. At first, silence hurts, because it brings you back to yourself. But that's where real freedom begins. It's not out there. It's inside you. Think about Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years behind walls, but never let anyone steal the only space that truly mattered, his inner world. Because he understood the most powerful freedom isn't moving outward, it's staying grounded within. Seneca put it perfectly. The soul needs silence, like the body needs rest. So if you feel trapped, maybe you don't need to break through walls. Maybe you just need to lower the volume. And finally hear what you've been trying to tell yourself for years. Will you? 8. When was the last time you did something just for you? Congratulations, you've made it this far. You're here, still standing, still showing up. You've done what was expected, fulfilled your duties, been available, helpful, proper, all these years. But now be honest with me. In all that effort to be there for everyone else, did you forget to be there for yourself? When was the last time you did something that had no apparent use? Something that didn't make you more productive, a better parent, a more efficient worker? Something you couldn't justify with, well, I have to. Do you remember? And no, that quick shower between obligations doesn't count. Nor does that late-night series you half-watch with your phone in hand and your mind somewhere else. I'm talking about something done with intention, for you, because of love. Because those kinds of acts, the ones you do without pressure, without needing to explain, are the ones that keep your connection to yourself alive. The Stoics didn't call them indulgences. They called them refugees of the soul. Silent gestures that no one else sees, but that bring you back to yourself. Without them, you get lost. You become efficient but absent, productive but empty. You know what they are, that aimless walk, that notebook you've been meaning to open, that hour to breathe without guilt. And you know because your body has asked for it more than once. But you always had something more important to do. And here's the thing, when I ask you about it, maybe you smile. But inside, it stings, because you know it's been too long. Because you gave yourself to everyone except you. When did you start treating yourself like the last name on your own list? The Stoics weren't talking about selfishness. They were talking about responsibility. To them, anything that doesn't come from your center is bound to overflow. Marcus Aurelius wrote it with pain when the world pulled at him from every direction. Stop wasting time debating what a good person should be. Be one. And that doesn't start with grand gestures for others. It starts with what you give yourself. Henry David Thoreau, another thinker who walked away from the world's noise to find himself, wrote it clearly. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to confront only the essential facts of life, and see if I could learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. And that line, written in the 19th century, is more urgent now than ever. Because if you're living a life full of duties but empty of meaning, if you're following a calendar but not an intention, then yes, you may be breathing, but you're not truly living. And that's when Stoicism speaks to you again. Freedom doesn't come from escaping the world around you. It comes from returning to yourself, through small acts, sacred time, presence, not to produce more, but to remember who you are. pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what would you do today if no one expected anything from you? Maybe you'd paint. Maybe you'd walk with no destination. Maybe you'd just stare at the sky without needing to explain why. And you know what? That is living too. That is also courage. Because in a world that celebrates you for running, taking one moment just for you is an act of quiet rebellion. And no, I'm not saying you should abandon your responsibilities. I'm saying include yourself among them. Don't become a functional slave. Don't live by checking boxes and die in small installments. Want to start? Do something this week that serves no purpose except meaning. Don't wait for applause. Don't post it on Instagram. Don't explain it. Do it like someone watering an invisible plant. Because you need it. And if someone asks why, say, because I'm me. Do it for the child you once were, for the adult who got lost, for the soul that's still waiting for your attention. Because in the end, the greatest Stoic act of all is recognizing that you are worthy of your own care. 9. Tomorrow never dies. Tomorrow never dies. And no, I'm not talking about the James Bond movie. I'm talking about that invisible enemy living in your mind, dressed up as hope. That perfect place where everything important always gets pushed. Tomorrow I'll start. Tomorrow I'll change. Tomorrow I'll be brave. Tomorrow I'll breathe. Tomorrow I'll live. But tomorrow is a trick. An empty promise you use to avoid committing to the only real moment you've got. This one. And the worst part? You believe it. Because tomorrow hasn't let you down yet. Because in that later, everything feels clearer, cleaner, safer. But the present doesn't wait. The Stoics understood this well. Even without alarms, emails, or social media buzzing in their pockets. They knew the human mind, 2,000 years ago or now, always looks for excuses not to act. Marcus Aurelius had an empire waiting outside his door. And even so, he wrote to remind himself that today is enough. Seneca didn't write abstract meditations. He wrote to his friends about how every distraction, every "I'll do it tomorrow," was a slow form of self-abandonment. And Epictetus, in all his brutal clarity, put it simply, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best from yourself? You don't need a robe or a candlelit room to apply that. You just need to open your eyes in the middle of your routine and realize that every time you say, "I'll see," you're locking away a part of you that wants to break free. That message you never send. That decision you keep delaying. That step you know is right, but keep wrapping in polished excuses. The trap is subtle. It feels like you're thinking, but you're actually avoiding. And you know it. You just don't want to admit it. So you delay it another day. Marcus Aurelius knew this. That's why he wrote to himself like someone trying to wake up before falling asleep again. Don't live as if you had 10,000 years. Death hovers over you. As long as you live, as long as you can, be good. And also, your life is fleeing. What you are living now is all you have. And you, who feel something isn't right, who live as if you're inside a cage of your own making, are you really going to keep believing that someday you'll be granted permission to truly live? Don't you see? Enough. This is about you, your life, all that you've been putting off behind well-written excuses, dreams held hostage by your own "when I can." How much longer will you postpone your freedom? You don't need more time, you need more decision. Ask yourself how many parts of you are waiting for something external to happen before you come alive. And what if that moment never comes? Because yes, tomorrow never dies. But while you keep feeding it, today fades away. Your body keeps moving, but your life goes numb. And that isn't living. That's postponing your existence with fancy words. Want a real Stoic act? Do it today. Even if it's not perfect. Even if you're scared. Even if you don't have it all figured out. Stoicism isn't for when you're ready, it's for when you're done living stuck. And you, who feel like a prisoner, can't you see that your prison is also built from tomorrow? From everything you say you'll do, but never do. From every broken promise you've made to yourself. Today is the day. Not the special one, not the perfect one, the possible one. And that's enough. My friend, now you know, tomorrow never dies, but your life does. Don't sacrifice it for a well-written excuse. Before we continue, I want to invite you to be brave, because if you're here, I know you already are. Write in the comments that one thing you've been saying you'll do tomorrow, and declare that today you take the first step. It could be just one word, or simply write, "Today I won't wait any longer." Because sometimes, the only thing your freedom needs is a decision written from the heart. 10. Your habits shape your destiny. You're not what you think or what you dream. You are what you do every single day. And the Stoics knew this. They were people of action, feet on the ground, minds trained. They didn't write to sound wise. They wrote so they wouldn't forget to act. They knew philosophy wasn't a speech. It was a practice. Marcus Aurelius didn't jot down thoughts to post on Instagram or to have his soldiers go around bragging about what a good leader he was. He wrote to remind himself each morning how he wanted to show up in the world. And what about Seneca? He didn't write letters to show off his wisdom or his handwriting. He wrote to challenge himself to live in line with what he preached. He wrote to help his friends grow, to support his family, to rise with them. Epictetus put it clearly. Don't boast about understanding the principles. Show them through your behavior. My friend, the Stoics weren't armchair philosophers. They were walking examples. They lived in alignment with what they believed, because they understood that what you do each day, no matter how small, is another brick in the building of your destiny. And that's the most powerful truth of all. Because when you start consciously choosing what you do, when your actions, however small, come from intention, you begin to pull out, brick by brick, the invisible bars of the prison you've been trapped in. The prison of unconscious routine, of automatic reactions, of living to please, to perform, to survive. Every conscious habit is an act of freedom, a silent declaration to the world. Today, I choose. So don't underestimate the small stuff. Every quiet gesture, every unseen decision, every unnoticed action is writing your life. And if you repeat it without thought, without presence, without purpose, then what you're building isn't freedom. It's just a more comfortable cell. One that feels safer maybe, but still locked. Now ask yourself honestly, how am I making that freedom I long for real in my daily life? Because that's where the key is. Not in big dramatic changes, but in what you repeat day after day. Your habits. That's exactly where your freedom or your prison begins. As Aristotle said, excellence is not an act, but a habit. And you know who agrees with that ancient wisdom? James Clear, a modern-day thinker and author of Atomic Habits. He sums it up like this: every action you take is a vote for the person you want to become. One of his simplest, most powerful tricks? Make the new habit so small that you can't fail. Don't think about changing your life. Just leave a glass of water ready for the morning. Put your book on the pillow. Meditate for 2 minutes, not 30. Habits don't begin when they're noticeable. They begin when they're repeated. And if you feel like a prisoner in your life, maybe you don't need some dramatic escape. Maybe what you need is a series of small, quiet loyalties to yourself, a daily commitment, almost invisible, but unstoppable. Here are 3 practical decisions, simple, stoic, real. First, start your morning without a screen, 5 minutes with yourself, in silence or writing, so that your first thought of the day isn't borrowed, it's yours. Second, break one automatic behavior that no longer represents you. Maybe it's checking your phone every time there's a pause. Maybe it's always saying yes when you mean no. Don't replace it yet, just stop repeating it. And notice what changes. Third, each night recognize one small action that aligned with who you are. It doesn't matter how small. Acknowledge it, because that recognition is fuel to keep going. You cannot cross the sea simply by standing and staring at the water. Rabindranath Tagore, your habits shape your destiny, but not a destiny written in the stars. a destiny you give yourself permission to build, step by step, gesture by gesture. And today, though it may not seem like it, could be the day you begin to rebuild from within. 11. Accept your losses. Some trees let go of their leaves, so they don't die with them. They don't fight the autumn, they don't resist the wind. They understand that loss is part of the cycle, and only by letting go can they bloom again. But you, how do you react when you lose something? I know we've been taught to resist, to clench our fists, to stay in control, to hold on to what's already broken, as if that made us strong. But no. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is let go. Because if you're carrying everything out of fear of losing it, then what you're really losing is yourself. And that fear, even if you never say it out loud, traps you. It shrinks your world. It tightens your chest. It keeps you prisoner to what was, long after it stopped being. The Stoics understood this. They weren't cold or numb. They were clear. They knew that suffering doesn't always come from what we lose, but from what we refuse to release. Consider nothing as truly yours if it can be taken from you, said Epictetus. That's not resignation, it's wisdom, because not everything that leaves takes from you. Sometimes what leaves makes room. Think of the snake shedding its skin, not because the old skin was bad, but because it no longer fits. How many old skins are you still wearing simply because you don't know how to let them go? Picture a tree in the forest. Autumn comes, the leaves fall, and yes, the tree is left bare, vulnerable, but not sad, because it knows this is part of the process. It accepts life's rhythm without clinging to every leaf. Don't confuse loss with failure. Sometimes letting go is the bravest move, not because you're giving up, but because you're choosing to respect yourself. There are things, people, plans, and ideas that have already played their part. Their final scene in your story has passed, and holding on to them is like standing in an empty theater, waiting for a show that's never coming back. So pause. Look closely at your life. Not just what you have, but what you're still clinging to. What are you holding on to? What are you afraid to name because deep down you know it's over? This is Stoicism at its core. It's not about feeling less. It's about seeing more clearly. It's about understanding that pain isn't always a sign something's wrong. Sometimes it means something just no longer fits, and if today you feel trapped, with that silent pressure in your chest, don't just think about what's missing. Think about what you should have let go of long ago, and still carry. Because sometimes you're not a prisoner of what you lack. You're a prisoner of what you refuse to release. Ask yourself this, not with guilt, but with clarity. What part of your life has already served its purpose, but you're still forcing it to stay? Maybe it's a habit, a relationship, an idea. And if you can recognize it, if you let it go, you're not losing yourself. You're rescuing yourself. Because losing is not the opposite of winning. Losing is often the most direct path back to you. And if loss is the first act of freedom, then the next step is even harder. Because once you stop fearing loss, there are no more excuses. You can't blame the past. You can't hide behind what used to be. Now you have to look yourself in the eye and face the most uncomfortable truth of all. No one is coming to save you. That life you want, that lightness, that peace, no one's bringing it to your door. It doesn't arrive on its own. It begins the moment you choose to stand without what was holding you back. Are you ready for that? And if it's hard, because of course it is, here are 2 simple Stoic tools to begin. First, write down what you know you need to release, what weighs on you, what no longer resonates. Then tear it up. Don't keep it. Don't overthink it. Tear it up. Your gesture says more than 1,000 intentions. Second, change one small daily action that keeps you tied to what you no longer want to be. You don't need to fix everything today. Just begin acting like someone who no longer needs to carry that. Because sometimes, the first act of freedom is as simple as letting go. And my friend, if you've made it this far, don't leave just yet. You're one step away from escaping your own prison. Because letting go frees you from the weight, yes. But tell me, What's the point of being free if you don't know where to go next? Stay just a little longer. What's coming now might give you the direction you've been searching for years. 12. Freedom isn't moving, it's knowing where you're going. Moving doesn't always mean progress. There are people who run all day long and never get anywhere. People who change jobs, change partners, change cities, but carry with them the same confusion, the same mental prison. They're prisoners of themselves. Because real freedom isn't about moving. It's about knowing where you're going. And you, who've made it this far, who may have already let go, who dared to look within, now face a new question. Now what? The Stoics didn't believe in living without direction. For them, a life without purpose wasn't freedom. It was noise. It was distraction. It was drifting. Marcus Aurelius constantly asked himself whether what he did each day brought him closer to, or further from, his true nature. Because if you don't know where you're going, any impulse can become your new jailer. As Viktor Frankl once said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And that, while it sounds philosophical, is also backed by science. Modern psychology confirms it. People who live with clear direction, even when facing difficulty, report greater well-being, less anxiety, and a deeper sense of meaning. Frankl called it the will to meaning. The Stoics taught it through a different language, but the message was the same. Freedom isn't doing everything. It's knowing why you do what you do. Breaking the chains isn't enough. You have to choose what you'll build next. Because if you don't set your own course, someone else will set it for you. And there's no prison more invisible than believing you're free just because you're in motion, when in truth you're not choosing. Think of a ship without a rudder. It can sail, sure, but it's at the mercy of the wind, the waves, the chaos. That's what life without direction looks like. Plenty of movement, but no destination. And I'm not talking about huge goals or motivational catchphrases. I'm talking about that fire inside you that lights up when you do something that aligns with who you really are. I'm talking about your internal compass, the one that only activates when you listen to yourself in silence. That's direction. That's freedom. Because you weren't born to repeat the same day over and over. You were born to live with meaning. And you won't find that by running or swapping scenery. You'll find it when you ask yourself, with brutal honesty, does what I'm doing represent me? Does this life bring me closer to myself or take me further away? This last step, the quietest of them all, is the one that truly sets you free. The ability to make decisions not from fear, not from urgency, but from your truth. And if your life has felt like a prison, externally or internally, know this: movement alone is not the way out. Choosing the right direction is. So walk, but don't run away. Walk toward what makes you more you, toward what demands presence, toward what doesn't distract you, but reveals you. Because real freedom isn't changing places, it's returning to yourself and staying there. Breaking free from the prison you live in doesn't happen all at once. It's the result of small, conscious acts, of those invisible decisions you make when you choose to be yourself, even when it's hard. Every day is a key. You can either open the cell or reinforce it without even realizing. It's not about running without direction or pretending everything's fine. It's about pausing, looking inward, choosing with courage where you want to go, and finally, walking free. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "Today I free myself from my invisible prison." That way, I'll know who the true Stoic warriors are who made it to the end. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a like so you don't miss out on what's coming next. I also invite you to check out our playlist, which you'll see on the screen. It's packed with ideas, stories, and advice to help you navigate life with more wisdom and confidence. Click it, and let's keep moving forward together. Until next time, take care and keep embracing your inner Stoic.